The late afternoon sun hung low over Crestwood, a small coastal town in North Carolina, casting long shadows across the cracked pavement of the Seaside Community Center's parking lot. The air was thick with the scent of salt and pine, a breeze carrying the distant crash of waves. Amara Tate, a 38-year-old nurse practitioner, stepped out of the center's glass doors, her duffel bag slung over one shoulder. Her navy leggings and loose tank top were damp with sweat from the youth mentorship class she'd just led, teaching kids basic self-defense moves. Her braids were pulled into a neat bun, and a faint scar traced her left eyebrow, a reminder of a life she'd left behind. Amara was unassuming, her frame petite but wiry, her movements precise yet understated. She was the kind of woman who blended into a crowd, her quiet strength overlooked by those who didn't know her story. Amara adjusted her bag and headed toward her beat-up hatchback, parked under a flickering streetlight. The community center was her sanctuary, a place where she poured her energy into kids who reminded her of herself at their age, scrappy, underestimated, full of potential. Tonight, she'd stayed late, helping a shy teenager named Kalia perfect a wrist escape. Amara's phone buzzed in her pocket, a reminder of her next shift at Crestwood General in 6 hours. She sighed, already calculating how much sleep she could steal before the chaos of the ER began. As she approached her car, the low growl of an engine cut through the evening's calm. A black pickup truck rolled into the lot, tires crunching gravel, parking sloppily across 2 spaces. 3 men spilled out, their laughter jagged and too loud for the quiet evening. Amara's eyes flicked toward them, assessing without pausing. She'd seen their type before, men who carried themselves like they owned every space they entered. The leader, a broad-shouldered man with a buzz cut and a faded tattoo peeking from his sleeve, was Vance Holcomb. His voice carried over the lot, rough and taunting. "Yo, look at this one, all serious with her little gym bag," he called, his grin sharp as he leaned against the truck. The second man, lean and jittery, was Riley Parrish, his fingers tapping a restless rhythm on a soda can. The third, Marcus Webb, hung back, his hoodie pulled low, eyes darting like he was already regretting being there. Amara kept moving, her steps steady, her keys in hand. She didn't respond, didn't glance their way again. Her focus was on her car, on the rhythm of her routine. But Vance wasn't one to let silence slide. "What, you too good to say hi?" he pressed, stepping closer, his boots scuffing the pavement. Amara reached her car and popped the trunk, placing her bag inside with deliberate care. She felt the weight of their stares, the way the air shifted when men like this decided to make you their entertainment. "I'm just trying to get home," she said, her voice low but firm, like a blade sheath but ready. She closed the trunk, the click loud in the quiet lot. Riley laughed, tossing his soda can toward her car. It hit the ground near her feet, fizzing as it spilled. "Oops," he said, his smirk daring her to react. Amara's jaw tightened, but she didn't flinch. She bent down, picked up the can, and set it on the hood of her car, her movements slow, controlled. "You dropped something," she said, her eyes meeting Riley's for the first time. They were dark, steady, unyielding. Vance's grin faded, replaced by a flicker of irritation. He didn't like being ignored, and he liked being challenged even less. "You got a mouth on you," he said, stepping into her space, close enough that she could smell the cigarette smoke on his breath. Marcus shifted uncomfortably behind him, muttering, "Man, let's just go." But Vance ignored him, his chest puffed out, his voice dropping to a mock-friendly tone. "We're just having fun. No need to get all serious." Amara's heart beat steady, a metronome honed by years of discipline. She wasn't afraid, not anymore. Fear had been burned out of her a decade ago, replaced by something harder, sharper. She stepped back, giving herself room, her stance loose but ready. "I don't have time for your fun," she said, her tone flat, final. "Walk away." The words hung in the air, a line drawn in the sand. Riley's smirk faltered, and Marcus took a step back, his hands stuffed in his pockets. But Vance wasn't done. He laughed, a harsh bark, and reached out, not to grab her but to flick her keys from her hand. They hit the pavement with a jangle, skittering under her car. "Pick him up," he said, his voice daring her to bend down, to lower herself. Amara didn't move. Her eyes locked on Vance's, and for a moment, the world narrowed to the space between them. She saw it in his face, the assumption that she'd back down, that she'd shrink. It was an assumption she'd faced too many times, one she'd learned to dismantle with her own hands. "You're making a mistake," she said, her voice so calm it seemed to unsettle him. Vance's smile twisted. "Oh, you're gonna teach me a lesson," he mocked, stepping closer. Riley egged him on, chuckling, but Marcus was already retreating toward the truck, his unease palpable. Amara's body shifted, her weight settling onto the balls of her feet. She didn't need to think about what came next, it was muscle memory, instinct honed by years of training in a dimly lit gym, under the watchful eye of her mentor, a former kickboxer named Ms. Evelyn. When Vance lunged, it wasn't a punch but a shove, meant to push her back, to make her stumble. He didn't expect her to move faster. Amara sidestepped, her body flowing like water, and caught his arm, twisting it behind him in a single, fluid motion. Before he could react, she drove her knee into the back of his thigh, forcing him to the ground with a grunt. The impact echoed in the empty lot, sharp and final. Riley froze, his soda can forgotten. Marcus cursed under his breath, already halfway to the truck. Amara held Vance's arm just long enough to make her point, then released him, stepping back. "Get up," she said, her voice steady. "And leave." Vance scrambled to his feet, his face red with shock and humiliation. "You're crazy," he spat, but his bravado was cracked, his hands trembling as he backed away. Riley hesitated, then followed, muttering under his breath. Marcus was already in the truck, the engine roaring to life. Amara stood her ground, watching as they peeled out of the lot, tires screeching, leaving behind the faint smell of burnt rubber. The parking lot fell silent again, the streetlight buzzing overhead. Amara knelt, retrieved her keys, and unlocked her car. Her hands were steady, but her mind was racing, not with fear, but with the weight of what had just happened. She'd spent years preparing for moments like this, but each one carried a cost, a reminder of why she'd learned to fight in the first place. As she slid into the driver's seat, her phone buzzed again. She ignored it, starting the engine and pulling out into the night, the ocean's rhythm fading behind her. Amara's apartment was a small, tidy space on the edge of Crestwood, overlooking a marsh where egrets waited at dawn. The walls were bare except for a framed photo of her with her grandmother, both smiling at a church picnic years ago. She dropped her duffel bag by the door, kicked off her sneakers, and headed to the kitchen, where she filled a kettle for tea. The routine was grounding, a way to anchor herself after the parking lot. Her hands moved automatically, but her mind was elsewhere, replaying the incident, dissecting every move, every word. 10 years ago, Amara hadn't been this version of herself. At 28, she'd been a nursing student, scraping by in a rough neighborhood in Raleigh. One night, walking home from a late study session, she'd been jumped by two men in an alley. They'd taken her backpack, her phone, and her sense of safety. She'd fought back, but it wasn't enough. Her nails left scratches, but they left bruises. The police found one of the men, but the other vanished, and the case went cold. The experience left a mark deeper than the scar on her eyebrow, a wound that didn't heal until she found Ms. Evelyn's gym. Ms. Evelyn, a wiry woman with a voice like gravel, had seen something in Amara: anger, yes, but also resolve. "You're not here to punch walls," she'd said during their first lesson. "You're here to rebuild yourself." Amara took to kickboxing like it was a language she'd always known. She trained 5 days a week, her body learning to move with precision, her mind learning to trust her instincts. By the time she moved to Crestwood, she was a different woman, not fearless, but prepared. Now, sitting on her couch with a mug of chamomile, Amara checked her phone. A text from Kalia, the teenager from her class. "Miss Amara, you okay? Saw some guys acting weird in the lot." Amara's stomach tightened. She hadn't realized anyone had seen. She typed back, "I'm fine, Kalia. Thanks for checking." But as she scrolled, she saw notifications piling up, a video posted to a local Crestwood group, tagged with her name. Her heart sank. The clip was shaky, filmed from the community center steps, but it captured everything: Vance's taunt, the soda can, her takedown. The comments were a mix of awe and venom. "That's how you handle business," one read. Another, "She's looking for trouble, acting like that." Amara set the phone down, her tea forgotten. She'd wanted to keep her skills quiet, a private shield, not a public spectacle. But the world didn't work that way anymore. By morning, the video had spread beyond Crestwood, shared across platforms, paired with hashtags like #badassnurse and #don'tmesswithher. At the hospital, her co-workers were buzzing. "Amara, you're a legend," said Jamal, an ER tech, grinning as he restocked a supply cart. But others were less kind, whispering about how she'd provoked the men, how she should have walked away. At lunch, Amara sat alone in the break room, scrolling through the comments. One stood out, from an anonymous account: "You think you're untouchable now? Watch your back." The words hit like a punch she hadn't seen coming. She'd faced threats before, but this felt different, personal, pointed. She screenshot it and sent it to Ms. Evelyn, who called immediately. "You didn't start this, Amara," she said, her voice steady. "But you need to be ready. People don't like being shown up, especially not men like that." That evening, Amara returned to the community center, determined to keep her routine. The kids noticed her tension, though she tried to hide it. Kalia lingered after class, her eyes wide. "Miss Amara, that video, was that really you?" Amara nodded, forcing a smile. "Just something I had to handle." Kalia's awe was palpable, but so was her worry. "They're saying stuff online. Mean stuff." Amara knelt beside her. "People always have something to say. You focus on what's true, okay? You're stronger than their words." As she drove home, Amara's phone rang. It was an unknown number. She let it go to voicemail, but the message chilled her. It was Vance, his voice low, strained. "I didn't know you were like that. I messed up, okay? But this video, it's ruining me. My girlfriend left, my boss is pissed. Can you, I don't know, say something?" Amara deleted the message, her jaw tight. She didn't know him anything, but the call lingered, a reminder that actions rippled in ways she couldn't control. By the end of the week, Amara's life had become a lightning rod. The local news picked up the story, framing her as a hero nurse who'd taken down 3 men single-handedly. A national outlet reached out for an interview, which she declined. Brands sent emails offering sponsorships, and a martial arts gym in Raleigh wanted her to teach a guest class. But alongside the praise came a darker current: threats, slurs, accusations that she'd enjoyed the fight, that she was dangerous, unstable. At the hospital, the attention was a double-edged sword. Patients asked for the fighter nurse, some with admiration, others with unease. Her supervisor, Dr. Lin, pulled her aside. "You're doing good work, Amara, but this spectacle is distracting. Keep it out of here." Amara nodded, but the words stung. She'd never asked for the spotlight, yet it followed her, relentless. The community center became her refuge, but even there, the air had changed. Parents whispered when she arrived, and a few pulled their kids from her class, citing safety concerns. Kalia, though, stayed loyal, practicing her kicks with extra focus. "You're my hero, Miss Amara," she said one evening, her voice fierce. Amara's heart swelled, but she knew heroism came with a cost. She'd fought to protect herself, not to become a symbol, yet the world had other plans. One night, as she locked up the center, she noticed a figure in the shadows. Her pulse quickened, but she kept her stance loose, ready. It was Marcus, the quiet one from the truck, his hands raised in surrender. "I'm not here to start anything," he said quickly. I'm sorry. For that night. I didn't want it to go like that." Amara studied him, her guard still up. "Why are you here?" she asked. Marcus shifted, nervous. "Vance and Riley, they're pissed. Not just at you, at everything. They're talking about coming back, making it right. I thought you should know." Amara's stomach twisted, but she kept her face neutral. "Thanks for the heads up," she said. Marcus nodded and disappeared into the dark, leaving her alone with the weight of his warning. She called Ms. Evelyn that night, recounting everything. "You've got a target on you now," Ms. Evelyn said bluntly. "But you've also got power. Use it wisely." Amara spent the next day preparing, not just physically, but mentally. She reached out to a lawyer friend, documenting the threats, and installed a security camera at her apartment. She wasn't running, but she wasn't naive either. At the hospital, a new patient caught her attention, a young woman with a bruised arm, her eyes downcast. Amara recognized the signs of abuse, the same ones she'd seen in herself years ago. She sat with the woman, listening, offering resources, and quietly slipped her a card for the community center. "You're stronger than you know," she told her. The woman's tentative smile stayed with Amara, a reminder of why she kept going. Weeks later, the frenzy around the video began to fade, but Amara's resolve grew stronger. She leaned into her role at the community center, expanding her classes to include women's self-defense workshops. The turnout was small at first, but word spread, and soon women of all ages filled the gym, their laughter and determination echoing off the walls. Kalia became her unofficial assistant, her confidence blooming with every class. Vance and Riley never returned, but Amara stayed vigilant, her training a constant anchor. She started a blog, not about the fight, but about resilience, how to rebuild after trauma, how to stand tall when the world tries to push you down. The blog gained traction, not for its drama but for its honesty, its quiet power. Readers sent messages, sharing their own stories, thanking her for showing them they could fight back, even if their battles were different. One evening, Amara received an email from a local TV station, inviting her to speak at a community safety event. This time, she said yes, not for fame, but to share her message. At the event, she stood before a crowd, her voice steady as she spoke about empowerment, about turning pain into strength. "We don't fight to prove something," she said. "We fight to protect who we are." Afterward, a woman approached her, tears in her eyes. It was the patient from the hospital, now enrolled in Amara's class. "I left him," she said. "Your class gave me the courage." Amara hugged her, her own eyes stinging. This was the real victory, not the takedown in the parking lot, but the lives she was helping to change. As Amara drove home that night, the ocean breeze cool against her skin, she felt a peace she hadn't known in years. The bullies had picked the wrong woman, not just because she could fight, but because she'd spent a lifetime learning to rise above. Her strength wasn't just in her fists, it was in her heart, her community, her refusal to be defined by others' mistakes. And in Crestwood, under the same stars that had witnessed her stand, Amara Tate was building a legacy that no one could take away.